additions or corrections at this time.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Dave and a second by Mary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we'll have the invocation with Oak Heights Covenant Church.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Excuse me. The Apostle Paul tells Timothy to do this exactly in his letter to Timothy, where he says, I urge then, first of all, that requests, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for everyone, for kings and those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So thank you for this opportunity. Let me pray for you. In your name, Father God, we thank you for today. We thank you for these individuals who have heard the call for leadership in Hutchinson area. Lord, we pray that you give them wisdom and guidance through this meeting. Help them to know exactly what the needs of the people are and guide their conversations. We pray all this in your name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, do we have any recognitions of gifts, donations, or community service to the city tonight? Okay, if not, do we have any citizens wishing to address the council this evening? All right, we do not. Next, we'll approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 28th, 2020.
I'll make motion to approve those.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Steve and a second by Mary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next we have the consent agenda. Item A, consideration for approval of issuing a short-term gambling license to Minnesota's Deer Hunting Association on April 4th, 2020. Item B, consideration for approval of issuing a short-term gambling license to the Hutchinson Rotary Foundation on April 17th, 2020. C, consideration for approval of the City of Hutchinson Airport Hangar number 1672 lease agreement. And D, claims, appropriations, and contract payments. Does anybody want anything pulled off?
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion by Steve and a second by Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have no public hearings tonight. And under communications, requests, and petitions, we have the fire department's annual report with Chief Schumann.
Good evening, Council, Vice Mayor. We will keep this short. I sent this out ahead of time, and it is, just for anybody watching, it is on the city's website as well under the fire department annual report. So I'm going to kind of breeze through the actual report. Councilman Cook, you'd asked me some questions specific. I'll go over those after we get through the report, and then any other details. But please ask anything as we go or as we move through the report here. Dedication, usually we, if we had had any firefighters that passed away or retired, those would be noted here. We did not have any in 2019. I just noted on there that there were 42 civilians that lost their lives in Minnesota in fire deaths. So we just wanted to acknowledge that, and then also honor the 227 firefighters in Minnesota that have died in the line of duty since records have been kept dating back to 1881. No fire deaths line of duty in 2019, but we've already had one in 2020, and we had two, I believe, in 2018. Page 3 is just my letter to the council and town board representatives, and I'm not going to go through that. I just want to note specifically that we've been continuing to focus on our health and wellness initiative. We've completed our fire gear, PPE equipment, cleaning, extracting, drying equipment. That's all in place and in use. And we're just keeping our focus on that with all of our firefighters on the physical health, mental health, et cetera, of doing their job. Goals and objectives, a lot of that stuff stays fairly similar from year to year. If there's any big specific ones that jump out, I do want to note our officer-only program is still kind of a backbone of our operation as far as limiting the call-outs to the entire fire department. We usually average about 150 of those calls per year. I think this year we had 130, where just one fire officer goes out, and I'll go over that in more detail. That'll show in some of the data here later in the report. Staffing, we're fully staffed. We've got 32 on the staff right now. We are expecting one retirement this year in 2020, and we know we've got another expected retirement in 2021. And we also have several individuals that are eligible to retire. Hopefully they do not at this point. But with that being said, we're planning on conducting a hiring later this year, late summer, like we usually do, in preparation for those that we know that are going. Flow chart, that's again stays the same. We have 8 officers, fire chief, assistant chief, 2 battalion chiefs, and 4 lieutenants with varied responsibilities. We won't go over the individual officers. Last year, in this last calendar year, we took on 5 new firefighters. 4 of them were brand new, went through all of our firefighter training, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, licensed, certified, and then completed their medical training as well, which is the new standard now is EMR, Emergency Medical Responder, and they have passed all those classes and obtained all the necessary certifications. And then in the middle there is firefighter Enselman, who came to us from Silver Lake Fire Department. He's a City of Hutch employee at the street department under John over here. Thank you, John. He's been a huge asset. He came to us fully trained, and he's got 6 years, 7 years? Yeah. He's got 6 or 7 years of experience at Silver Lake and has all of this certification, so he's a plug-and-play individual. But we got him up to speed with our operation, how we do things. He attends trainings as needed of ours and then responds to day calls while he's here in Hutchinson. He lives in Silver Lake, but that's been a huge asset for us this year. It's helped our daytime response, and he's a very solid firefighter. So those 5 all came on fully here at the end of the year. And then each year we ask the peers to kind of vote for the awards for Firefighter of the Year. That was Chris Dostal. Officer of the Year, Randy Abelson. And Distinguished Service is Lieutenant Jeff McKay, who's with us tonight here. Snap. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There was another city employee, there was 2 of them that were noted that
Yep.
joined?
The second one is Lieutenant Josh Schulte. He's been with our department now he's coming up on 15 years, I think, 14, 15. He just started with the street department with John here too in this calendar year. So he's, again, been with us for a while, but now he's in that dual purpose mode. And I think it's been going well, John?
Yes, yeah, it works well. I did it for a good chunk of my career. I know how it works, so we work it out, no problem.
So it's been appreciated. It helps to have those, and they try to be judicious as far as when they can respond, they respond. When they can't, they can't. But having 2 of them available quite frequently has been a huge bonus. And we've actually got a 3rd firefighter that just started out at Creekside here recently too. So that'll actually be another one we'll add in the 2020. As far as pictures go, I try to throw up a few pictures from different events. I won't go over those in detail. Our roster is actually, other than actually it's unchanged from last year. The rookies are no longer rookies though now at the end of the year. Operational data, I'm not going to go over each one of these. However, staff-wise, we're at 32. Community service, the volunteers, those are typically people that come to us from either McLeod County Community Service Program and we have several individuals from the Village Ranch that come at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, and help out with projects around the station. So that's appreciated. Officer numbers have been unchanged. I think probably the only note on our firefighters certification stuff, the reason you see a 0 in 2019 is because this is the first year that we haven't done a hiring. So we didn't do a hiring in 2017. The hiring we did in 2018, those guys completed everything in 2019. So we've taken a year off in between. My entire 20-year career, we've done a hiring every year. So this is the first time that we haven't had a new set of rookies to train, which has been nice to have a little bit of a break even for our staff in there. So realistically, we hope to be able to stay in that rotation where it's kind of an every other year thing instead of every year. Usually we have between retirements and things change, people have, life changes, they move, job change, whatever it may be, and we usually lose one person a year just in general because of that, but we're staying solid right now. Injuries, we only had one recordable injury, that was a back injury. The call breakdown, the city calls, these, this will be slightly different. There's a couple differences when I give you the detailed report, just because I have to submit this information early enough to get it printed. So by the time I reconcile it, there's usually a couple, and I think we were at 322 city calls versus the 318 that it shows on there. But I'll go over that in detail here shortly. No fire fatalities this year for us. Response time, that's from the time that we're paged to the truck out the door, 5 minutes and 50 seconds. A little improvement from last year. Note the last 2 years now are the first 2 years that we've had really solid data where we're literally looking just at the calls that the trucks roll. In all the years past, it's been kind of a cumulative total of all of our calls, officer only, regular calls, etc. We're really trying to look at the calls that when the alarm comes in and we're paging on our people to respond, what is that number? Because that's the true number that we need to be dialed in on. So officer only calls, that is not a misprint. It's the same, exactly 130 from last year to this year. Estimated dollars saved, just over 25,000, and 1,900 hours, man hours saved. Our fire safety, fire prevention, again, we still have a heavy focus on our education program. Number of classes were down just a little bit this year, along with our number of students. The only reason that is we did have 2 cancellations this year. One was weather related and one was a timing issue, which took out about 200 plus students or people that we would have normally trained. So that number would have been about 1,900 had Mother Nature not intervened. The fire extinguisher classes that we conduct, that's in conjunction with the equipment that we have jointly purchased from 3M. And then the inspections, and that's one of the details I was not able to get the data broke out on that yet. Steve, I'll work on that throughout the week here, but some breakout of the inspections as far as how many of each one. That's in a different database that's not electronic, so it takes a little more pencil work to get that. And then noted on the bottom there, property value saved directly by our interventions in 2019 was $1,110,000, and lives saved by our interventions were 5 this year, 2019. Emergency calls, I just grabbed some pictures of some different, try to show a little snapshot of some of the different activities we go to, because when you see the numbers, fire is actually the smallest portion of what we do. A lot of it is other things. It's rescues, it's medicals, it's car accidents, and everything in between. The one note that our training chief, Brandon Vick, wanted me to just talk about was we're selected as part of a pilot program for 2020. The state is doing an initiative on some online training that they are going to be they have their curriculum together. And we're part of the test group for that, so it will allow us to do some online training. Right now, we train every Monday night. The hope of this is that as we get into this program, and this will be a trial year, so we won't have a good grasp on it until the following year. But our hope here is to offset some of those nights where it's pure classroom, maybe some of our annual required stuff, our OSHA stuff, et cetera, where we can have our guys do it on their time, and not have to come down on a Monday night, give them a break on a Monday night here and there, and just allow them to do the training online. And then also some specific stuff where we can do an online course followed with the next Monday night with the hands-on piece of it. It kind of helps tie that together. So we're excited about the opportunity. I think it'll be a good, once we get it figured out, it'll be a good thing. The equipment chief, Jason Sturgis wanted me to just touch again on our health and safety initiative, and then probably the biggest thing is we've got 2 truck committees in place right now that are working on replacement of our Tanker 4, which is a 100% rural piece of equipment, and then Rescue 8, which is a shared vehicle 50-50 between the city and the rural. Those are both scheduled to be replaced in 2021. We just had a rural township meeting here last Thursday, and they made the final approval to move forward with the project to complete that. So I'll be working with Matt here on some details upcoming, and that'll be presented to you guys at a later date here. Vehicle maintenance, I'm not going to touch on the individual items there unless somebody has something specific that they see or have a question on.
I was curious, one note was about a pump that went out on one of the tankers.
Yep, on the tanker. So tanker 6.
Thinking about how important the pump would be on one of those. Do they have like dual pumps installed? So if one does fail, you have a...
No, they don't. So the pump on a tanker is basically just a transfer pump. It can pump and operate a hose line for fighting fire, but it's a very low, it can only do one hose line. So it's more designed to pump the water from that truck to another truck. It failed, and it's ironic because we literally had truck checks a couple nights before and it was run, and then we went out to a fire, grain bin or grain dryer fire in sub-zero temp, and they parked the truck and went to recirc the pump because that's what we do when it's sitting there, and made a nasty noise, a clunk, and it was done, and the pump and everything was shot. So that was almost that entire $8,000 bill was for the pump assembly on that truck. And then the last page of our report is the equipment, our capital improvement schedule. So we're trying to forecast out 15 to 20 years. We keep adjusting these numbers based kind of on market, inflation, and what we're projecting for cost replacement on those vehicles. So highlighted on the side there, the yellow items are city-owned entirely. The 2 blue tankers are rural-owned 100%, and then the orange ones there are shared vehicles. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm going to switch gears here, and the handout, the supplemental handouts, these are based, Steve, on questions you had. That's good. Oh, okay, thank you. That's better. Okay, Steve, you had a question on our ISO rating and kind of what that means, and just to highlight that. In 2016, we completed our ISO audit. That's a once every 10-year process, and the data was finalized at the beginning of 17, and we improved from a class 4 to a class 3. Now, anybody that has done any research or knows anything about the ISO, the Insurance Services Office, it's a third-party entity. Their data is a piece of data that some insurance companies use, some do not use, to base formulas for fire protection and cost of fire protection for homeowners, landowners, et cetera. So the bar graph that's up there is Minnesota, how we compare to Minnesota. So we are now a class 3. There are no class 1s, that's the highest level. The class 2s are the full-time career, you know, the Minneapolises, the St. Paul's. Class 3 are, most of those are kind of those ring metro communities that have either duty crews part-time or duty crews full-time. And then us as one of the very few outstate ones that meet the class 3 criteria. Now in my notes at the bottom there, it says we have a split rating, which is normal for outstate Minnesota. The insurance world looks at everything in geographics. So any location within the city limits or within 5 miles of the fire station we're a class 3. If it's outside of that, we're a class 3Y, which means 8B on their chart. Don't ask me why. But most departments that have rural areas, you know, we cover 180 square miles in our fire district. Most departments are not an 8B, they're either a 9 or a 10. So we're, again, one of the few that fit in that lower section for the rural classification. So I know that's probably not very clear, but any questions on that? And I have talked to a few different insurance companies, just asking them what they use, and they all have different formulas. Some use this as a piece of their formula. None of them use it as a standalone, you know, end-all be-all. It's a piece of the formula. So it's just a good benchmark to kind of see where we're at, because a big piece of this, it's not just the fire department. I mean, we get the number, we get the, whether it's good or bad, we get to the number, but much of it is also about the inspection process, the infrastructure, the water supply is probably the biggest component, honestly. And our infrastructure, our water system is fantastic. I mean, our capacity and then just the GPM that we can deliver at the hydrant is incredible. So thanks to Kent and John. Oh, John left. But that's a huge part of it. So questions on that?
Just appreciate you explaining that and sharing it. It just, kind of, like I said in my note, it's kind of like our bond rating. You know, they look at different things, our policies, and it's just kind of an outside assessment.
Correct. Yeah, I think, and I'm gonna, now that you asked that, I'll put that in the report next year. It's a good item to have in there because it's a benchmark. So, and then you had asked for breakdown of the city calls versus the rural calls. So, one of your handouts you have in front of you there.
I was just more curious on the fire calls part of it that you have.
So there was 322 city-only calls, so that's on page 1 and on page 2 of that document. And then this breaks it down, starting with fires on top, how many of each type of call we went to. And then each township is broken up out of that in detail as well on there. So when we have our rural township meeting, they get a copy of this too, so they can see how many calls and what type of calls we responded to in their township or their jurisdiction.
This really shows the variety of calls that you get involved in.
It does. If you go to the other handout that looks almost exactly the same, this one is incident type, all 463 calls. Starting with the most, all the fire-related ones by the category. So 34 fire-related events where something was burning. The next category, and that's the biggest one, 225 calls that were either medical, car accident, rescue, some type of removing a person from harm type call. And that's, 48% of our calls are that. And then the other note here in the category 4, this is the 2 big ticket items on there. 47 natural gas leak calls and 35 carbon monoxide calls. Almost every one of them was handled by the officer on call. So that's one person taking all of those calls, and which helps us keep our firefighters at home, at work, wherever they're at, and not have to have the entire department respond to those. So that's why that officer-only program is such a benefit to the city and to our staff. Any questions on any of those? And lastly, I figured you'd be sick of looking at numbers on a spreadsheet, so. Just calls by month, just kind of shows the trend, which is kind of all over the board. So the month is on the bottom, January on the left, December on the right. Kind of odd, actually, because December, usually once we get into the heating season months, November, and then you have bad weather, driving, et cetera, November, December, January are typically high. November was our highest, December was one of our lowest, so kind of throws that theory out the window. And one last one here somewhere. Are my 10 minutes up? Passed.
Okay.
Yeah, that was timer. I guess I don't. That's the last one I had. So any questions on anything I went over or anything that you'd like to see?
I have a couple,
Yes.
and they're just basic questions for you so that
This
everybody else knows.
This is on your time now. This is not part of
Yes,
my.
okay, I'm on the clock right now. What's the median age of your fire department men, women?
As far as years of service or physically their age?
Like, are they mostly in their 30s, in their 40s? Are they in their 20s? Are they all over the board?
They're a little bit all over the board. We've got some early 20s and we've got some 50 plus. And, spread out all in between there. So what's probably been interesting the last few years, we've had some of our core or solid group firefighters are ones that came to us in their 40s and decided they want to be a firefighter at that point in time. We've got a couple of those, and they're incredibly good. Usually we assume we target new recruits as, young men or women before they're married or maybe before they start their families, and try to capture them before their life gets really busy. And the last couple that have come to us in their 40s have kind of been at the end of that. Their kids are older and they're not as busy, and they want to give back to the community. So we've got everything from 20 to 50s.
All right. And right now, you have no women on the force?
No women on the force right now. We've, I think the last female was about 6 years ago. But I've been on for almost 20 years, and I know we've had at least a half dozen in my tenure there. So maybe the next hiring we'll get one.
Right. What's the age of retirement? What is retirement for a fireman or a firewoman?
Whatever they want. They're eligible to draw. So we have a the Fire Relief Association has a pension system, and to be eligible for that, or you can draw that at age 50. So a lot of people do decide to retire at age 50 because most of them at that point have already got 20, 25 plus years in. So that's a pretty normal.
They have, 10 years of partially vested?
Minimum of 15 years to be vested to draw any type of pension. 20 years to max or be 100% vested. So, but age 50 is the earliest you can draw a pension.
Well, good. That's all I had to ask. I just thought this would be good for the public to get some of this information out. So when you're looking for a new personnel, they got some of it right away.
Absolutely. Yeah, so a couple, our ones that have come to us in their 40s, they're going to have to work a little longer to get to a pension, but,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Any last questions?
Notice you did get 2 of the washing machines, right?
Yes, we have 2 of the commercial washer extractors.
Is that sufficient? You know, I don't know how many sets of gear will fit in one of those, and you have a number that have to get washed.
Well,
so.
yes, it is. And we're one of the few that have 2, I can tell you that. And the reason we did that, we did a lot of research on the front end of this, and there was grant programs out there for those from the State Fire Marshal's office. They were very specific on what size you could get, and our fire gear, like everybody else's, it's a 2-part. There's an outer shell and an inner shell, and they have to be separated to be laundered properly, because you want to keep the outer shell that has the majority of the toxins and carcinogens on it separate of the inner shell when you wash them. So you have to separate them. Well, our previous process was a standard kind of residential washing machine that would fit one set of, like, the outers, for instance. So for one person to launder their gear would take an hour cycle for one piece of it, another hour cycle for the second piece of it, and then 12 hours to 24 hours to dry it. So it was terrible. So we looked hard at what we wanted, and we said, you know, if we have 2 machines, we can wash our inners and outers together at the same time. And now our dryer can turn the drying time around in 3 hours. So a team of 2 can get off the truck, go over, drop their gear, 2 sets of inners in one machine, 2 sets of outers in the other one, push start, clean up the trucks, and by the time we're done getting stuff back together, they already have their stuff in the dryer. So it's been leaps and bounds where we've come from what we had before. So the answer is yes, we have exactly what we need now.
Okay, just I thought another one or a couple more would help.
We're good. Two is a good number.
All right.
They're big. They take up a lot of space. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief Schuman. Thank you. All right, we have no unfinished business tonight, and under new business, we're going to issue a taxi license to Dan Henniger.
Deal with this one.
It's okay. So, Mr. Vice Mayor and Council, we did receive the application from Mr. Hediger to operate the taxi cab. Everything seems to be in order with his application. So we'd be recommending that you approve it.
All right, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the taxing license to Dan Haniger.
All right, we have a motion by Mary, a second by Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
It's curious, the rate, was that $10 that was listed on there, or something for?
I think that's just, is that our application fee? This is the $10?
I assume it's $10 for the ride. That's his rate.
Okay.
I think it's $10 for the ride.
All right, next under new business, we're looking to reschedule the February 25th, 2020 City Council meeting.
Mayor and council, we talked about this briefly at the end of our last council meeting, that February 25th is caucus night, and so we're not allowed to have any public meetings between 6 and 8 p.m. Last time we ran into a similar situation, we just moved up the council meeting to 4 o'clock, and we made sure that we were done by 6 o'clock. We likely won't schedule any public hearings. If we did, it would be at 5 o'clock that night, but, and so staff is recommending that we move our February 25th council meeting from 5:30 up to 4 p.m.
All right, any questions, or does that work for everybody?
Make that a motion.
All right. I will second. All right, motion by Steve, I seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Under governance, we have minutes and reports from committees, boards, or commissions. Item A, Hutchinson Utilities Commission minutes from December 18th, 2019. B is Motor Vehicle Department 2019 recap. All right, staff. All right, Kent, what do you have for us tonight?
A couple quick things on the Highway 15 Main Street project front. Seems to be a little confusion. I just wanted to clarify, and we've had some calls since the public hearing a couple weeks ago. We aren't requiring people to hook up to the water service stubs that are currently serviced, the properties currently serviced by the alley water main. There's about 30 properties on the west side of Highway 15 Main Street, and we're just putting stubs out to those that'll be capped within the sidewalk for potential future services. Now, I think I explained that during the hearing process, but we've had some calls since then, and I think there's a little bit of confusion. So, and then basically what we'll do is have a list of those properties and what's installed, and designate a future connection fee cost that would be assigned to that property if and when that service is ever connected to. Just wanted to make that clear. There seems to be a little confusion there.
Yeah, there was a little discussion and make it clear, and there's really a short window if anybody wanted to do that.
Yep, exactly. Mr. Schleter had asked the question, during the hearing, but we did get a couple calls from a couple other properties since then. Otherwise, the plan holders list is out. It's looking good at this point. There are actually 7 contractors on there that have designated themselves as potential prime contractors. So, and then there's probably 30 to 40 subcontractors listed. So, yeah, and seems like we're getting some interest, at least from what's on the plan holders list at this point, from some I guess, larger contractors in the metro area. So far so good, and we'll learn more on the 28th. That's it.
All right, Mark, do you have anything else tonight?
Nothing else tonight.
Yeah?
Couple things. Obviously, offices are closed next Monday for the President's Day holiday, so just kind of remind everybody. And then we do have scheduled for next Tuesday, February 18th, that work session, which is scheduled for 2 o'clock. So I should have stuff out in regards to that by the end of this week. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Mary, we'll start with you tonight.
I don't have anything except it is Valentine's this week, so enjoy it and have fun. Hug the person you want to be with.
All right, thank you. Dave?
I really don't have anything for tonight.
All right, and Steve?
Just one thing, Mary Henke came a couple meetings ago with the talk about the community book read, and I wound up reading that over the weekend and highly recommend it. It's a pretty fast read, but really interesting. I think a lot of people could connect to the story in a lot of different ways. If you like the outdoors, if you have dogs, and just the relationship with pets, and then just understanding really what the Iditarod is about, and the type of land that you go through in Alaska. So it was really good. That's it.
All right, I didn't have anything extra tonight, so we're just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion to adjourn by Mary, second by Dave.
Wait.
And I'd just like to note, in my 12 years of council, I don't think we've ever been out of here before 6:10. So here we are.
I agree.
So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion adjourned.